Habibis, three game developers drinking good Arab tea. My name is Rami. I'm your host for this episode.
And I'm your co-host, Osama Dorius.
And there's
Should
no
I
there's
do
no
my
third. Show yeah, do your Fawzi
should I do
impression.
my improv? And I'm Fawzi Metzbar.
Wow, Fawzi, glad to
How
hear
was
you're here as well. He said he might be late, but I'm just glad you're here.
folks? I know I'm very convincing. That was not Fawzi. That was me
It
pretending.
wasn't? Really?
It wasn't. I know.
Wow.
I know. It's hard to believe.
I
I'm getting
I'm
better and
shocked.
better at that
I mean,
impersonation.
okay, Osama. If you say you're Osama, right? Prove to me that you're not actually Fauzi doing very convincing Osama impression.
uh, I like hugs.
Actually, Fauzi also like hugs.
No,
I'm
he
being
doesn't.
bamboozled here. I'm being bamboozled.
You don't even know who you're talking to.
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, the one way I could find out, I think, is I think Fauzi would be able to describe Osama's chin. And I think Osama would be able to describe the top of Fauzi's head. This is the only way.
That's a trick question because I can't describe the top of his head because of the glare. I've never actually seen it.
So you're Osama. See? The only way you
Yeah,
would
you
know
got
that.
it.
The only way you would know that if you've been blinded by the glare off of Fauzi's head. No other
And
way.
if he was blinded by the glare of my chin, right?
Oh, that doesn't work. That's not how that works at all.
Doesn't work. Awesome.
See,
How you doing, Rami?
Alhamdulillah. I'm in Saudi Arabia actually at the moment, so I'm in Saudi. It's nice to be in the Arab world for a bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually going to go back to the Middle East in April. I was invited to go back, but I had a conflict, so unfortunately I won't be there.
Oh, Malish, that's a shame.
Yeah, I had my hopes up. I had a whole thing planned, and then I looked at the dates of the two things I was invited to, and they were on the same week. And I'm not going to
Oh,
be able to make that work. It was too hard. I'm
right.
not a Rami. I can't. I can't
No.
land, do my talk, and like fly out again. I can't
Well,
do
if
that.
they need a backup, just point them in my direction.
I just might. After this,
No,
we'll talk about it.
that's good. That's good. How's your week been? Like I'm in Saudi Arabia. It's warm, but not too warm. It's nice. The people are like good people. Good food. Like I'm having a blast. How's your time?
My last week has been amazing, other than the weather. It's been incredibly cold in Montreal, which is par for the course for January. So I'm less
Yeah.
worried. We had a really warm November and a mostly warm December, and like I can't enjoy it because I'm like, this is not good. This is not normal. And
Right.
now that everything is back in like as frigid as it usually is, I'm like, okay, I could breathe now. It's not as bad as I think as it could be. Otherwise, I think I mentioned last week that I was commissioning art for my board game. My first piece of art
Yeah.
came in, and I love it.
Oh, so
And
exciting.
yeah, it's so cool. So hopefully, I'll have something to show at some point. But like right now, I'm just commissioning more little pieces, doing some playtesting,
So good.
polishing it up. I'm super excited about it.
So
Yeah, good
good.
things are happening.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
What are you doing in Saudi, if you don't mind me asking?
So there's this program that has existed for a long time across the world called Game Founders. And
Oh.
Game Founders has existed in many places. It existed in Kuala Lumpur. It has existed in Estonia. It has existed in many places. And effectively, it's an incubator slash accelerator program for young games industries. So I've worked with them
Mhm.
quite a few times because they keep going to territories where I think there's opportunity for the industry to rapidly grow. So Saudi Arabia is obviously like a very interesting place right now for game development. There's a lot of interest. The youth is um, more optimistic about the future than they've ever been. I think here in the country. There's a lot of focus of moving away from the old, like oil industry and fuel industry towards new industries, and you're seeing projects like Neom and the Line, and a lot of investment in video games. So basically, the local government here, for all of its faults, is investing very heavily into game development and into digital media. and a part of that comes with the notion that there needs to be more jobs in games. Part of it comes with the notion that there needs to be incentives for AAA to be here, and part of it comes with the notion that there needs to be grown a local community of game developers. And that last part is obviously where I come in. That's sort of my specialty around the world. Is like, how do we create healthy and sustainable independent communities? So
Mhm.
um, that's what I'm here for. So I'm mostly training this sort of first and second batch of game developers, and we're talking about groups of like 60 to 80 people each time, I think. And
That is so exciting and so important.
yeah,
I
I was
can't
looking at
wait
the
to
room
see.
earlier, and
Yeah.
I was just thinking of like early indie days,
Mm.
just like global indie, and just sort of recognizing the vibe. Like everybody's excited.
Can you
Nobody knows
describe
what
it
they
in any
signed up
way?
for. It's
Uh,
like there's like an optimism. There's an optimism and there's a naivete as to how hard things are actually going to get. Um,
I see.
but everybody is there because they firmly believe that there is an opportunity, and that the opportunity is tied to their ability to create things, right?
Hmm.
And like we all know, if you've been in the industry a bit longer, that sort of like rubs off of you. Like it's not just about how
Yeah.
good your work is.
No.
It's not just about being good. It's not just about working hard. It's not just like there's a bit of luck. There's a bit of bad luck. There's a bit of circumstance, of context, of privilege, of oppression. There's like all sorts of things that play into whether you can make a game. But they also have a benefit, which is that back when we were doing this, when we were figuring it out, there was nobody to tell us.
Yep.
Nobody could tell us what we were signing up for, and like it's so cool to be paying it forward to this new generation of creators and developers, and to be explaining to them the mistakes we've made, the lessons we've learned, the things we've seen, um, and the sort of like the ways that you could think or could choose to think about a lot of these things. And there's just an excitement and an eagerness and a hunger. Um, it's reinvigorating.
No, absolutely. I don't know exactly what you're talking about because I haven't lived that experience. But the closest parallel from my life that I could think of is at the end of at the beginning of each semester, when we get new students coming into our independent game design program, it's the same thing. We have to give them like multiple lectures about the hard lessons of the industry. It's not, and a lot of it is overlaps with what you're talking about. It's not just you and your skill. You have to do your best so that when the opportunity happens, you're ready for it. But you don't control when the opportunity comes or even if it comes. And you have to be mentally prepared for that. Otherwise, you have to manage your expectations, right? No,
Right.
they don't know what they don't know, and that's normal. We none of us know what we don't know. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
do our best to prepare them for every possible outcome. And it's
Yep.
hard. It's hard on them. It's hard on us.
Yeah, they're very open to it though. Like I talked today about how like I expect that 80 to 90% of the games are not going to be successful, and they were just like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
This is one thing I've noticed about emergent territories, marginalized territories, is they're way more familiar with the sense of like things not working out, and they're less
That
scared of
makes
it.
sense.
They're less
Yeah, that
scared of
makes
it, right?
sense.
You go to Montreal, you go to the Netherlands, you tell people, hey, like 90% of the games here are going to fail, and people are going to freak out.
They are. They're not used to having that kind of fail rate. It's not normal.
Right.
Usually you set on a goal and your chances of achieving it are pretty high because of all the privileges you have from being
Exactly.
in these.
And,
Yeah.
obviously that changes when you're talking to more marginalized groups in the Netherlands, in Montreal. But
Yes.
still, even for the more marginalized identities in those areas, like intersectionality starts playing in. Like, okay, you have the privileges of being in a Western country and a country where you have relatively easy access to visas and stuff like that. Here, getting to GDC is an unlikelihood, like ever,
Yeah, it's not a given.
right?
Even if you
It's not
have
a
the
given.
money, which is already difficult to have, even if you have like
Exactly.
something to show, a letter from the organizers, you could have all of these stacked in your favors and you could still be denied without
When you
reason.
come to the region, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? So I think the
Yeah.
idea of things not working out is just so much more natural to people that are marginalized, that face oppression, that uh, you know have to deal with rejection frequently. And so when you tell
Hmm.
people, you're going to send your pitch out to like 50, 60 publishers, and you might, at best, you might get three or four responses. They're like, well, it's four better than we have now.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Is it
Yep.
nice? Good. Yeah, that's the attitude, right? So
Hmm.
they're scrappy. They're resilient. You know,
Good.
they can deal with the realities of game development, and I think that's really exciting to see as well. Like they might not know what they signed up for, but they're definitely better equipped for what it's going to be like than I was when I started as an indie. Where I didn't have super high expectations, but my first game sold for $10,000.
Yep.
So for me, like, that was sort of like that was the low bar, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of money for the amount of work we put in, but it was a lot of money for a 20-year-old kid,
Hmm.
right? So
Who had never made $10,000 before, probably,
never
right?
even seen a number that I'd never even seen three zeros on my bank account, right? Like that just it had never happened. I had a side job that paid me 800 a month, and then I had 425 in rent.
Mm.
So I never made it over 1,000, maybe once or twice, but like it was not a that was rare. And then suddenly there were like four zeros, and that was wild.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
happy for you.
yeah, it was an amazing moment. I remember running through the building and high fiving, like it was just remarkable. Um, but that's kind of the reality of it, right? Like like things don't work out until they do, and they might never. But it's the until they do that you have to be prepared for, as you were saying earlier.
Exactly. Wow, I'm super happy that you have that experience. Yeah, it's so important to be able to lend assistance to these places. Often, what they are missing, I mean, a lot of things. I could give you a long list of things, but often what they're missing is they have the initiative. They need the mentorship. They just need someone to who's walked it before to be able to tell them, like what the path ahead might look like. And of
Right.
course, they need money.
Yeah, that's
Not
really
gonna
it,
deny
right?
that.
Like there,
Yeah,
because this is
yeah.
one thing I've noticed is, especially in the Western world, the urge to fix everything with access to knowledge is very
Yeah,
overwhelming. But
yeah.
unless you back that knowledge up with opportunity, knowledge won't help.
Yes,
Right? You can teach
exactly.
people how to deal with a budget, but if they never get the budget, it's great that you can calculate a budget, but it's not actually
Exactly.
helpful. So yeah, you're very right in identifying that that's the combination of things that you need. You need financial and commercial opportunity, and you need knowledge. And I think in a lot of territories like this, you know what the final boss is for me?
Hmm.
It's the parents. The parents are the final boss. When the parents start
Oh,
going, you know
interesting.
what, game development is great. Like I'm glad my kid is a game developer. It's that's when you've done it. That's when I stop going to places. Right, job's done. But
That's
when you
very
start getting
interesting. It's a,
parents being proud of a game
yeah.
developer kid, especially in like as you move towards the east or the south, yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
So I guess that has a lot to do with culture, like the stigma
Hmm.
against this profession specifically.
Yeah,
And that changes the more other people from that region or from that background start being successful in that field, because you can't,
exactly.
like, yeah, you can't fight that. Like once you see it, you can't deny
Hmm.
it. Oh, that person's successful, and he
Yeah,
went through
that's
this path.
exactly it.
Exactly. Awesome.
That's
So
exactly it.
this is a problem that, inshallah, by just working on it, it'll solve itself
Well,
in
that's
the
the
long
thing,
run.
right? Like, if one kid is successful, if any of these developers is successful, that's a story that all of them are going to be able to tell their parents, right?
Exactly.
Because right now, their parents are seeing, oh, my kid's going to go into video games. Oh, no, like, this is, it's basically worse than musician,
Yeah.
right? Or painter. Like, and nothing wrong with those jobs. They're amazing jobs, right? If you can make your money doing that stuff, amazing. But the honest truth is, most parents around the world will be terrified of that notion,
Of course.
right? So if you can get it to a point where parents look at that job and they go like, you know what, this is good, then it means
Hmm.
that you've created sustainability. The job
Hmm.
has cultural acceptance. The job has prestige, which is also important, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
The job is tied to economical stability or ability. There's an understanding of the craftsmanship or the professionalism involved. Like, if you can hit all of those targets, that's a really big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, it was my first flight
Awesome.
of the year.
Oh,
My
it's
first
true.
international flight of the year. Yeah,
2 weeks into the year. This is a slow year for you.
it is a slow year. Well, like it's been a slow start of the year, but it's a
Yeah.
slow. It's been a slow year to start, but um, I also means it also means I watched my first airplane movie.
Oh, what was your first Airplane movie?
It was bad. It was called
Is that?
Moonfall.
Oh, I thought that's what it was called. It was bad. Oh,
Uh,
Moonfall.
Moonfall.
Yeah. So about that, I
About
started watching Moonfall on a plane, and I did not get very
you
far.
didn't
I
finish? No, I had
No,
a
I
hard
did
time.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, tell me about it.
I finished it. So I'm gonna spoil the entire movie. It's been out. It's not good, and it's not gonna be better or worse for knowing how it goes. So in case you don't wanna, if you in case you don't wanna hear the spoilers, uh, I don't know what's wrong with you because like honestly, there's nothing good about this movie, and you
Just keep
shouldn't want
skipping
to
ahead
watch it.
until we're not talking about Moonfall
Right.
anymore.
I don't know what to tell you. The thing with Moonfall is it is genuinely a very good premise for a disaster movie, right? So the premise is one of the manned orbital missions goes wrong when the space station is attacked by weird like nano machine swarm in space, and then the swarm attacks the moon. And then for 10 years nothing happens except for that the astronaut who like survived the thing, split up with their partner who was also an astronaut on that mission, which seems like a problem. And then they've fallen from grace because nobody believes the nano machines. And then suddenly the moon leaves its orbit and starts crashing towards the earth. And they have like three
What?
orbits, and the orbits are like shorter and shorter because the moon is getting
Mhm,
closer. So
mhm.
you have a good. This is a good
Yeah,
3 arc structure,
it's an
right?
exciting premise, right? You could make a really
Right?
good trailer out of that.
You can make such a good trailer out of that, and
Yeah.
that's also the most you're going to get out of it. Because if the moon was crashing to Earth, we would just die. It wouldn't be spectacular. The atmosphere
Yeah.
would get sucked off of our planet as the moon crumbles into thousands of meteors that destroy all humanity on Earth. That doesn't make for a very interesting movie. So we do every trope from every disaster movie ever. We followed the weird scientist who was the first person to recognize it. We follow the two computer people who stay behind and pass away as they try to escape. We follow the hero and the hero's partner and the hero's new partner, or the hero's partner's new partner, and we follow a bunch of kids. And if you try to copy paste it harder from Independence Day, you have a hard time, right? And then it just plays out so beat by beat.
Mm.
The crazy scientist person was totally right. The moon is a spaceship. And we're now part of an intergalactic war between the people who made that spaceship, which is our ancestors, and the nano machines. And we're going to get consciousnesses beamed up. The crazy scientist is going to sacrifice himself to redeem himself. And the family, the new partner of the one of the main characters' exes dies, so now they can get back together. And I'm just watching it and I'm like, oh my god.
Okay, you know what? Then you sold me on this movie. I'm gonna go back and finish it. This sounds amazing.
It is
This sounds
so
incredible.
it is so deliciously cliche that I
Yeah.
really don't feel like my life is enriched or any better for having watched it.
Yep.
I didn't enjoy the movie. I didn't come out of it thinking like, wow, that was worth it. But also it was impossible to look away from me for most of it. It's like, oh, I know what's
So
coming.
does it fall into the so bad it's good category at
Here's the
all?
thing. I think it's arguable. I think the final twist where the moon actually is a spaceship, totally worth it.
Which
Totally worth it.
I did not make it that far. So
No.
that was is news to me.
Right.
Like I didn't. I think I watched 15 or 20 minutes, and just like I just was like, this is not for me,
Right.
and I moved
They
on.
even they
Moved on.
even stole the nuclear throne. Wow. They even stole the Independence Day beat.
Oh no! Are you gonna sue them? Yeah.
Yeah, they even stole the Independence Day beat where they tried to
Oh
nuke the
no,
thing,
no,
but
no!
then
Did
they
they?
have to like not do it because it will kill everybody on Earth. Because they're nuking the moon, but they can't nuke it before it reaches the orb, like it reaches the
Yep.
atmosphere. So
Yep.
they are gonna wait until the moon is over the atmosphere and then throw all our nukes at it. And I'm like, this is the worst plan in the history of ever, because now we're not just gonna die from the impact of the moon, we're gonna die from the impact of an irradiated moon.
Yeah, which is even worse. I mean, just
That's
like
that like
take the impact.
right. Just
Yeah.
die on like just death on impact, please. Like what is happening? But yeah, no, incredibly bad movie, not worth your time. If you are okay with that, it's totally worth your time.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to finishing it never. Wow. Oh, on that note, I watched a movie. Do you want to hear about it?
Was it good?
Eh,
Then
it
I want to
doesn't
hear
sound
about it.
as it doesn't sound as bad as Moonfall.
Okay.
So the movie that I watched is called Troll.
Troll.
And Troll. It's a movie. Where was it made? I think it was made in Norway. Or am I wrong? Wait, hold on. Let me look it up.
Okay.
But basically, it's a very typical, um, you know,
Norwegian.
oh, it's Norwegian. There we go. Very typical giant monster movie. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it to you. If you watch the trailer or if you waited 5 minutes into the movie, you would know that there's a giant troll in it. So it has this layer of this is true, it's always been true, but when Christianity came, we stopped believing in the trolls, and because we stopped believing in them, we stopped seeing them type layer. Like it's, the science is real, but folklore is real as well, layer type of
Mm. Yeah,
setup,
yeah, yeah.
which is okay. You could suspend your disbelief and be like, okay, you know what, they've always been around type thing. um the number of cliches in the movie, when you count, like, I couldn't stop watching because of them. Like, it was in the territory of so bad it's good to
Right.
me, but I could totally see someone else not enjoying it. But I was counting cliches. There were a couple of interesting, surprising moments, but so many of the that is impossible, and not of the I have to suspend my disbelief impossible, more of the within the rules that you've set up in your own world, this doesn't make sense impossible, right?
Right.
And it keeps happening. So there's this, like, without spoiling the ending, there's this troll who's in a giant, like, I'm talking about, he's as big as a building, like this is Godzilla
Mm-hmm.
sized creature, and this giant troll is in a cave, and there was someone who's doing, like, some company that was doing excavation, and then the troll just appears in front of hundreds of people, but they couldn't see him for some reason, and only shaky cam footage showed him. So everybody in the government thinks that it's not a troll, but it's an explosion, of, like, a natural gas explosion. And then they call this paleontologist who was in the middle of excavating dinosaur bones into a meeting room with all of the head of army, the military, and the government, without briefing her at all. So, and she walks in and is the only one who noticed footprints that were clearly footprints on the screen. And I can just go on with, like, the eye rolls. And she, like, figured everything out. She was the smartest person in the room. Everyone else there was an idiot. The most obvious things that, like, you see it right away. And I'm like, you're kidding. Like, anybody could have picked up on that. But she identifies it, like, and everyone disbelieves her. Like, look,
Right.
don't you see the footprints? And everyone's like, what footprints? I'm looking, I'm like, it's right freaking there. Like, what are
Right.
you talking about?
Well, they don't have
That?
to upgrade. That upgrades their hunter vision.
No, but I mean, like, it's not even piece things together. It's like, look at
Right.
the screen over and over and over. There's a
Right.
roar, and they think it's a gas explosion. And she's like, don't you
Right.
hear the roar? Like, it was the most, anyway. But to me, it was fun. I had a good time.
Right.
I enjoyed it. It was terrible. It was not good, but it was a so bad it's good type thing because I loved seeing these scenes and trying to predict what the cliche will be in this one, and it worked out. So not Moonfall. I don't highly recommend it, but if you like the trashy giant monster like cliche, like if
Right.
you like Godzilla type movies, you might like it.
Okay. Well, that does sound fun. Actually, I have a
Yeah,
question for you, Osama.
yeah,
Can you do another Fawzi impression?
yeah. Sure.
Is this troll that you're talking about?
How was my
Wow,
impression? Was
Osama,
that
that
okay?
was really good. That was really good.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been practicing. You want me to do it again?
Wow. Yeah, do it one more time.
I enjoyed the movie. It was very nice. I liked it, but I didn't like some stuff about it. It's me, Osama, doing a Fawzi impression.
I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, Habibi Fawzi, your impression of me making an impression of you is so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Very meta.
Just
What's
you wait until
happening?
you hear the impression Osama did earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to listen
You
back. Is
missed
it
it.
is it
You
Mickey
missed it.
Mouse again? Is it Mickey Mouse again?
No, it's Fawzi. It's absolutely Fawzi. It was so convincing. Rami didn't believe it that it was
I
me.
thought I thought I thought it was you doing an Osama impression, Fauzi. Honestly, like,
Yes. I love it.
I'm
How you
yeah,
sorry I'm
doing,
late,
Osama was
Habibi?
guys.
talking about troll. Indeed, it's okay, man. Like, it's busy. It's busy.
It
I was
Yeah,
just
is.
my
talking at
taxi
Riyadh
driver did
traffic here
some
in
like
Saudi
some
Arabia.
serious navigations, like
Oh
he
no.
it was a scene of an anime as the guy dropped me over.
As long as he didn't drop you. Awesome, man. We're happy to have you.
Rami, you were in Saudi Arabia, you're saying? You also had
I
taxi
am in Saudi
incidences?
Arabia. Yeah, yeah. I was in Riyadh, like getting driven around the amazing traffic situation here. So I was also a little late, but we made it work. We made it work.
Nice.
We've
Were you
talked
talking
about
about Troll, Osama? I think.
Osama is
Yes.
talking about troll.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I saw the trailer and I kind of like pieced things together from like the little
Yeah.
I heard walking in.
Yeah, it was troll. There was one scene in the movie that I really appreciated where two characters said assalamu alaikum to each other. Only one was Muslim, but the other like actually returned the greeting. And I was like, "Oh, that was nice." I like just normalizing people was such a nice touch. And it wasn't really a big part of the plot or anything like that. It just it felt good. You know what I mean? And the rest of the movie was so bad it was good in my opinion. Yeah.
I heard a lot of like people saying that it's one of those. It's kind of like a kaiju movie. It's like not a
Yeah,
movie that you
exactly.
take super seriously and you just enjoy it for what it is.
That's exactly it. If you like Godzilla type movies, you will like it. If you don't, you won't. It won't change your mind about it. It's Godzilla with a twist. It's Norwegian Godzilla, right?
Right.
Oh,
Actually,
nice.
Fauzi, I'm kind of
Norwegian
curious.
Godzilla.
Did you watch Moonfall?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay. All right. All right. It's bad. Don't
Good.
watch it.
Listen to
Oh,
this
okay.
podcast instead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen to the podcast where I tell you about how Moonfall is not worth your time unless you're okay
Uh,
with movies that are not worth your time. In which case, it's worth your time.
this week's episode is like the anti-recommendation episode. All the
So
movies you shouldn't
far,
watch, right
so
here on
far,
the
so
Habibis.
far. Yep. Do we have actually? Do we have any recommendations? Is there any good stuff that happened this week?
Yeah, I have one. It's I played a game called A Memoir Blue, and
Mm,
it's an interesting game. So basically, it's
I
a
played that too, actually.
yeah.
oh, you did, and you finished
Yeah,
it, I
yeah.
assume, since it's so
I
short,
finished it.
right?
Yeah, it's
Excellent,
very short.
excellent.
One setting.
Yes, like it's actually a 1 hour game, I think, maybe an hour and a half. I don't think it took longer than that. I didn't time it, but it was super short.
Yeah,
And I,
true.
I liked it, but I was really impressed by one thing. While playing it at the beginning, I'm like, wow, it feels like every scene is its own set piece. There's very little reuse.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of what the game is. It's kind of a narrative experience where you have very light puzzle elements to move from one scene to the next. And by very light, I mean sometimes it's not even a puzzle. It's just a clearly you have to move this thing here, or clearly you have to click on these things. You do it, and then something plays out. an animated short. Sometimes it's a 3D scene, different things like that, and it's telling a story of the main character without spoiling it. It's a main character is reliving her memories, and you're like piecing the memories together, or you're playing them out in different ways. It was beautiful, but what was impressive to me is I was shocked. It was like how not to make a game, the game. It's everything was new. Like every scene to scene, from setting to setting, it was like a new set piece, new models, new like animation styles, stuff like that. And in my mind, I'm like, this is unsustainable. How do you like it would take forever to make a game like this. And then it ended in
or
about an hour, and I'm like, okay, that's the
or you make a
that's
very short game.
a very short game. There's no other way. Like so, like when it ended, I'm like, that made sense. But the entire time, I'm like, how did they find the budget to do this? Right. So that said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had some really good moments. I'm not gonna say game of the year material, but definitely a very enjoyable experience. What about you, Fawzi?
Yeah, I agree with your assessment completely. I like
Hmm.
that it's I like when somebody's making a movie about a game about a personal experience. You know, like and the idea that we are trying to use the medium of game making as a way to do a memoir or a diary of some sort, or a way to represent a part of our lives for other people's to experience, and maybe even try to get a little bit in our shoes as we're doing getting those experiences. I think I will always encourage that, because it's like one of the most powerful things that our medium allows people to do is to step in somebody's shoes, and like, allows us to experience empathy towards others.
Hmm.
So I would say that, like, I so that's the part of the game I really like. I like that, it's a memoir in a game form, or like, and it's somebody trying to tell a story that is clearly deeply personal to them, with as little words as possible as well. So,
Hmm.
like, you kind of like need to project what's happening on the scenes in front of you, and it's trying to weave the real and the surreal, for you to kind of like put together
Hmm.
what happened and what does that mean to the person.
Hmm.
I agree with you that I think that, like it doesn't break new grounds gameplay wise, or even like,
Hmm.
when it comes to like the way the game is put together. It's a cute little game. I think I played it on Game Pass,
Hmm.
and yeah, you got an hour. It's an enjoyable hour to play. Not game of the year material, but I'm
Hmm.
happy it exists.
Exactly. I'm happy I played it, and definitely an hour well spent, in my opinion. And it won't outlive its welcome. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I like games like this, to be honest.
Me too. Me too.
I actually played a similar game that, it's like, partially autobiographic and also at the same time very short, like you finish it in an hour or less even.
Mm.
um, the game is called, We Will Always Have Paris. Have you
Oh,
guys
Hmm.
heard of this?
Yeah. Hmm.
It's like a,
that was a
like
movie.
a, it's probably a very good title for a movie if it doesn't exist already.
Yeah. Oh, that's
um,
just a line from Casablanca. I was like, where have I
there you
heard this
go.
before? It's a line from Casablanca. Yeah, of course. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm glad you remember, but frankly, Osama, I don't give a damn. uh,
Well, now I have to edit this. It was going so well, and then Fauzi showed up.
It's
It's
all.
just a mess. It's all just.
Oh my
There we
god,
go.
that was
Here
but
we go.
but
the
it's
delivery, the
needed. It's
timing.
it's needed for the joke, Rami. You can leave
It
that
was
in. Allah, my
it, it
reputation
was
can take
so
it.
good. I love it.
All right, we're leaving it. We're leaving it.
um, oh,
A
but
butter
seriously
curse
speaking,
word here. A butter curse word.
Yeah. But that's the
about
thing. If you beep it out, it sounds worse. So I'm just
Yeah.
saying, leave it in.
yeah.
Remember, really early on, we wanted to replace the like loud beep with just somebody going astaghfirullah.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. I'm really
And
We
glad we
also
did not do that.
experimented with Zagruta, remember? Like,
yeah,
Yes,
you know,
yeah, yeah. We had
instead
Zagruta
of
as
a
well.
loud beep,
yeah, I think that
somebody
Yeah,
was
goes like, la, la,
better.
la, la, la.
yeah.
I remember that.
Anyway, so we're talking
Yeah.
about
Anyway.
one. We will always have Paris. It's also like, you know, a short game. I played it on Steam, roughly an hour long, and it has a similar vibe. It's kind of like Florence esque, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
Memoir Blue is also similar to that. It's kind of like telling a story about this person and his relationship to his missus as he goes about his day. And I don't want to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything. It's such a short game. Like I could say two words and like
Mm-hmm.
literally spoil the whole game. But I think
Mm-hmm.
like it follows a similar thing that the Memoir Blue has, in which like it is just uh, autobiographical, heartfelt, and it also allows you to feel empathy towards a very specific situation. And yeah, once you realize what that situation is as the game unfolds, um, it hits you in a very interesting way. It goes like, "Oh, okay, I see where this is going, and this is like, you know, interesting." And it's a game made by two people. Like it's uh, a modest game, is how I describe it. You know, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just a couple of people working together and making a labor of love kind of thing. You know, just wanting the game to exist. It feels, and I kind
Mm-hmm.
of like celebrate that.
Mm, hmm.
So yeah, recommend it if you get your hands on it and you have an hour or less to spare. It's uh it's worth checking out.
I wish listed it. Thank
I
you.
Yeah, no worries. I do have another game I want to talk about.
Okay.
I don't know if did I. I'll talk about this game and then I handed this back to you, Osama. Just because, like, you know,
No, no, go
the
for it.
game
Go
you
for it.
the game you play is kind of similar to like in theming to the two games I played, which is like, you know, some of those like profound games.
We're in
I
sync.
played Yeah, we are. It's almost like we've been talking regularly for the past couple of years.
Almost.
I I played a game. I played this on PS5. It's called Endling.
Hmm.
Extinction is forever.
Yep.
Hmm.
So these are indie games. So like I know for a fact that Rami knows all of them, but um,
I don't
Rami's
know
always
this
in a
one.
position of, like, he either knows the games before they come out, or when they were an
Yeah,
idea, or when they were a
yeah.
gift that
Right.
somebody tweeted at him, or he played it in some event or something like this. I don't even
Oh,
bother asking Rami, "Do you know this game?"
I
Right.
didn't play
No.
this game, but I think it was nominated for an award, and that's how I
Yeah, it
found out
was.
about
It
it.
was. It was.
Yes.
It's Spanish.
Oh wow, that's
Beautiful,
awesome.
Yeah,
beautiful game. Anyway, Fauzi, go,
beautiful
go.
game. A
Yeah.
beautiful game. So I played it on PS5, but it's out on pretty much everything. I think it's on Switch, PS4, Xbox, Windows, even on Android. So you can play it on everything. I'll start off right off the back, just commenting on what Rami said. It is gorgeous. Like the art style is wonderful. It is like this cartoony, atmospheric cartoony style, kind of like
Mhm.
cell shaded and how it's
Mhm.
working. It is a 2.5D style game in which like you're going right to left with like sometimes you go into the depth and then the camera switches and now you're going back right and left as well.
Mhm.
Um, you play as a mother fox who has a bunch of cubs
Mhm.
that just basically tries to survive. You know, like day in day out, you try to go get food for your cubs. You venture outside of your den, right? It's a fox's
Mhm.
den, right?
Mhm.
Um, you venture outside, you try to get some food, and then you bring that back to your cubs. And
Mhm.
hopefully, you know, like nothing bad happens to you while you're outside. And then, like, eventually the cubs grow to the point that they can start following you outside. And then, like, you go out and, you know, teach them how to live life. And you venture outside, you know, away from your dens area more and more to
Mhm.
kind of like try to get food and all of that. At the end of every day, you need to go back to your den. That's how the day ends. And if it's nighttime and you're still out, it kind of like bad things happen. So what you want to do is that you know you get out of the den and you have the daytime to explore as much as you want as the of the world. Try to find things that will guarantee your survival for you and your cubs. and then go back before nightfall. And the area around the den is being heavily affected by mankind, so to say. Um, so there are like industry, there's factories that are like really damaging the environment around you. Sometimes there are man-made fires that go out of hand and burn forests and stuff like that. There's bear traps. So like there's all kinds of like human meddling with nature that
Mhm.
makes the game so much more difficult for you as the fox to survive with your cubs. And yeah, I
Looks
think that's
beautiful.
again gorgeous
Yeah.
It
game.
is so
Like
beautiful.
Watch.
It's also just the narrative is beautiful. Like the whole thing is beautiful.
I
and
just
it's
added it to my
again
wish
like
list too.
a way to make you feel what it's like to be somebody else, and in this case to be what's it like for those creatures to some extent, and
Mm.
like how their day to day is difficult and how we are making it more difficult for them, so to say. Yeah, uh, really, really cool game. I love the concept.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, and
recommended
they,
for sure.
I really love. So without saying too much, I really love how they sneak in so much. Um, by the end, you feel so much about the human impact on the world, right?
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
as you're playing through it, you become so poignantly aware of how much easier things would have been for these creatures if we hadn't messed it all up for them.
Mhm.
And I just thought that was really powerfully done. It's a
I'm
beautiful
Beautiful.
game,
looking forward
Yeah.
to trying it. Yeah.
truly.
And you said
Well,
it's also not a very long experience?
it's a
No,
bit longer than the other two games,
Mm.
but it's not that long.
I like this
I
trend. Please, people, make
yeah.
short games that I could finish.
This one's like 5-6 hours, but like your game could finish very quickly if you like if you're not very careful. Like you can
Oh,
yeah,
so
you
it's
can
as
finish
short
the
as
game in
Elden
10
Ring,
minutes
right?
if you want.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like I
exactly.
think I looked it up. It's four. It took about 4 hours for me. So
Cool. Okay, that's a very reasonable amount of time. I love it. That's great. I played another game if you want to hear about it, but
Well,
this
yes,
game is
please.
completely different than the other ones that we were discussing.
okay.
Um, it's called "You Suck at Parking."
Oh yes.
So basically, in this game, it's kind of like a gauntlet where you are racing a car, racing between quotation marks, but it's like the what's that? I always forget how it's like tank controls. That's the word I'm looking for. So the car's in tank controls, the camera's fixed. If you could get an idea, it's zoomed out, and you have a lot of these little mini cars that are driven on the screen, and you're controlling one of them in a gauntlet uh, obstacle course where there are individual, like little tiny parking spots all over the map. You can park at any one of them if you can, try your best. And if you do successfully, you score a point. You can't park at that same one again, and you restart the gauntlet. The catch is if you stop at any point, it considers that you parked. And if it's not on a parking spot, you fail and you start over again. So you have a time limit, and all the cars are trying to park in as many spots as possible. I think I covered all of the gameplay because it's pretty simple. I mean, there are
Okay. Let me
obstacles,
let
so
me
there's
let
like,
me try. Let me try. Let me give it a shot.
all right, go
It's
for
a realistic parking simulation game.
it.
100%. Especially especially the jumps and the magnets are just
Yes,
like
yes,
you
and
know
the teleporters and the
the teleporter.
flamethrowers. Yeah,
Usually when I can't find parking, I always use the nearest teleporter.
yep. There are little fun touches. Like if you catch fire, you can still drive, but on a time limit. You have like
Yeah.
5 seconds to still make it in your parking spot and stop. And you could pass on the fire to other cars if you bump into them. So there's a lot of potential chaos from a lot of different scenarios. So it's fun. I actually thought it was really fun. Uh, The only thing I'll say is that after doing that for a few online sessions, um, that was enough. I was ready to move on from it. It was intensely fun for a few rounds, and then I was like, okay, I've had it. So I don't know if other people will react to it differently and will see it as a long experience. But what I thought was really funny, and I don't mean this to insult the devs at all, because like I just like their naming of the thing. The game comes with a battle pass, and it's not the type of game that I would normally associate with a battle pass that people would play for a long time, like like a Call of Duty or a Fall Guys or that kind of thing. It felt like a fun little distraction you play here and there, not a thing that you show up again season to season to see what content they unlock. So already that I thought that was, oh, okay, that's interesting, unexpected. And then I laughed out loud when I saw that they called the battle pass a parking pass. So
They're
they
being
sold me.
facetious the
Yeah.
entire time.
Yes. So I thought that was
That's
really,
funny.
really funny.
It's
Still,
it's about
it's a game I
sorry.
think would be more fun if you play. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just to
No,
wrap
no,
up
go ahead,
quickly,
go ahead.
it's a game I thought would be really fun to play with friends. Maybe that would make it last longer. I played it alone, but I would recommend at least trying it out. It might be your a little bit more your cup of tea than mine, but I definitely enjoyed it. Rami, did you play
Yeah.
it as well? You sounded
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
did.
Belgian developer. I've been playing it for a long time. Amazing little crew and just such a lovely, joyful little thing. I would agree. I don't think it's a game that has staying power. I think it doesn't need staying power.
Mm,
You know, your experience with it is very much my experience with it, which is like, wow, I played it, I loved it so much,
mm.
and then when I was done with it, I was also just happy that it was done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that that's fair. Not every game has to be replayable forever. Sometimes you just want a new, interesting, unique experience for a while, and then once you've experienced it, you can move on. It's totally fair.
It looks very funny. It looks like, you can
Yeah,
have a funny, enjoy it playing it with friends or like stream it and just, laugh about for a
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
absolutely was. Yes. And that was my games for this week. Did we miss any games that we want to talk about?
Honestly, I played Dicey Dungeons on mobile. It's out on mobile. If you like Dicey Dungeons not on mobile, it's really good on mobile. If you didn't like
Dicey
Dicey Dungeons
Dungeons
not on
is
mobile,
very good.
So
then
good.
don't play it on mobile because it's the same game on mobile. If you haven't played Dicey Dungeons, listen to Fawzi. Go play
Yeah.
Dicey Dungeons on whatever platform you like.
It is such a clever
Yes.
game. Like the way they
Yeah,
use the dice mechanics for combat is something that, like as a designer, I'm pretty sure you two have the same experience. It's one of those why didn't I think of that moments where
yeah.
it's like so
Oh yeah.
obvious
Oh yeah.
and so
Without a doubt.
good, and yeah, it's
Perry
like it's right
Kavanaugh
in front of
coming
our
up with that
face. Yeah,
mechanic was just like, I'm just like, listen, you can't do that. You can't.
yeah,
This is not okay. This is too good.
yeah.
I'm jealous now. Let's move
Yes,
on.
exactly. Brilliant game. I still have my same save file of Dicey Dungeons that I jump in and play a couple of games
Yeah,
here and
me too.
there with
Yeah.
a new character, or I advance
And now
once in
it's
a
on my
while.
phone. So I was flying, and in between, like me being tired of Moonfall, I'd play a game of Dicey Dungeons.
That sounds phenomenal.
I
So,
for
Shell.
me, it's like Slay the Spire. It's one of those 2 to 3
Yeah,
games. I have this Slay the Spire and Tetris on my
yeah.
Xbox at all times, so that like
Right.
whenever I have 10 minutes to play, I will fire up one of those 3 games and play.
Yeah, I must
Yeah.
have easily over 1,000 hours on Slay the Spire between all the different consoles. I
Oh
have
my
it on
god,
everything, and I
It's
jump
too.
from one thing to the next. I
That's
just
too
checked,
much.
and I
Slay
have
the
300.
Spire is an Osama game for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. It's totally my game. Just on Steam, I have 340 hours. So, and I have it on
Wow,
Xbox, and I have it on Switch, and I have it on my phone. So over 1,000, easy, easy.
Whew.
worth it, worth it.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing
such
game
a
All
too.
good
right.
game,
All right. All right.
masterpiece game.
Let's-
There you go. So how about we do some mail? What do y'all think?
Yeah, we. You said
Yeah.
last week that there was some interesting mail.
Yes. So there's one new one that I'd like to read and one old one that I'd like to read. That both are a little bit lengthy, so let's give them the time that they deserve.
But
So
Osama,
yes.
if I have an email, how do I send it?
So if you have an email, make me very happy and send it to info@thehabibis.com. That's info@thehabibis.com. You will make
Oh
us
yeah,
all happy, but mostly me.
mostly you.
I love email. So we
I have
have
such a hard time figuring. I feel like Osama's talking to Osama at this point. These impressions are getting really good.
you'll see. You're gonna regret it because now I'm gonna send us email.
Okay.
We're gonna read it online. You're not gonna be happy. You gave me the idea, Yorami. All right, let's do this. So we have an email from frequent writer and one of my favorite writers because he writes so much, Jose. And Jose writes, "Sup, Habibis? While Rami managed to make a compelling and passionate enough reason to keep Dwarf Fortress in the top three on your list this year, I think he undersold its history that led right up to its release this year. Not the least of which, Dwarf Fortress was free. Even to this day, you can go to the website and download basically the full suite of generators and simulation that comprises the core game, free of charge. While it's true that a version with vivid graphics and UX had made the game more accessible to yet another degree, the only reason its development started was because its creators needed health insurance. Think about how that must have felt for them. I'm sure it was complicated on so many levels, but in the end, it's a tragedy of necessity that brought us here. Rami was also somewhat understating the development period. While the first notable release was in 2006, Tarn Adams has been working on Dwarf Fortress since 2002. At some point this year, there will probably be parts of the game that are old enough to be in college. Still,
Wow.
what a wild 15 years it's been since its release. The Adams brothers have maintained regular devlogs since the beginning, and we can only begin to guess how many game developers they've inspired and educated over the years. Just reading a few of them is enough to really get a sense of the degree of their humility, determination, and slightly odd sense of humor. Here's to 15 more years of Dwarf Fortress development, as many of our, or as few as they want. They deserve them all. Jose. Thank you, Jose. That was a beautiful email. I just have to say, I've met Tarn Adams, and he is one of the most humble people I've ever met. Really kind, like soft smile, and doesn't raise his voice. You have to sometimes ask him to repeat what he just said a couple of times, that kind of thing. And I really have a fondness for people like that who don't take up space, even though like they're huge figures in our industry just because of their influence and of what they did, right?
Yeah, wow. I would never like, I know Rami put quite the good word for the game, but I feel like I missed out by not following up on this game as it's being developed, especially knowing that it's since 2002.
Right.
That's yeah, that's almost my entire career. Like
That's
the they started making this game around the same time I started making games.
yeah.
And it's been going on since.
It's longer than my career. I joined the industry in 2007, so it predates by 5 years. And yeah, I was making like crappy little flash games before that. But yeah, I'm still really, really, really impressed by how long it's been.
Yeah.
And what kind of impact. He's right. He's absolutely right by how many people must have learned how to make games from those devlogs. The number is astounding, and how many other games it must have influenced just because of how highly systemic it is too. So, shall we go on to the next email? Thank you for that email, Jose. It was really great. We have another heartfelt email by Charles. This is an oldie, one of the ones that we didn't get to at the time that he sent it. So sorry about that, Charles. But we did read the email and we replied to him by email at the time. And I think this email warrants reading on the air. And so I'll start. Charles writes, "Dear Habibis, it's taken me 6 months, but I finally finished listening to every episode of the Habibis, including all the Sahur bites. You've become a
Wow.
regular part of my weekly media consumption, and I wanted to thank you all." Aw. Also, Osama seems to take such joy in receiving emails, so it's a good reason to reach out this way. Yes, it is. Listen to
Yes,
Charles.
please do it. Info@habibis.com.
Info at thehabibis.com. So Charles writes, "I'm a middle-aged father of two in the United States, and I've been playing video games for 40 years now. Since I was sitting on my father's knee and hitting the spacebar to drop depth charges on submarines on a small green and black monochrome screen. Computer and video games have been a huge part of my entire life, and is still one of my major hobbies. As I'm getting older, I find my tastes in games are changing significantly. I've no interest in war shooters like Call of Duty and the like, and don't really play anything with realistic violence at all these days. I think I see the world more clearly now than when I was younger, and I've lost my taste for that sort of entertainment in games and in other media. Is this happening
Hmm.
to any of you as well? I don't consider it a bad change at all, really, just interesting. Plus, more and more of my gaming is with my young children, and that affects a lot of my decisions as to what to play. It's a joy to have a reliable co-op partner in my older child, with Minecraft Dungeons being our go-to game this year. This year, which is last year. For my younger
Hmm.
one is fascinated by Turnip Boy commits tax evasion, Piggy with the watering can, even if he just wants to run around with the start in the starting village. And the pandemic spurred me to dust off the Nintendo Wii, still working after 16 years. Wow, it's been that long. So that we can
Wow.
have
I did not
Wii
want to know
bowling
that.
tournaments when grandma comes to visit. I want to bring up something important before I sign off. I appreciate that your show highlights that the three of you are great friends and care about one another, which is evident from your interactions. I
Aw.
think too much of American culture
Hmm.
pushes boys and men away from publicly expressing emotion to and care for one another, and it's unhealthy. And with the world being what it is, your show is a welcome and heartwarming demonstration of a better way. I look forward to listening to your show for as long as you'll make it. Best regards, Charles. And wait, this is the best part of an amazing email. P.S. Osama, the dad jokes are
Oh,
excellent.
come
Keep them
on.
coming.
Oh, come on.
It was an amazing email
All
until
the
the
way.
very end.
All the way until after you got past Charles.
Charles, why did you have to ruin
Why,
it?
why did you do this?
Don't
Don't listen to them,
don't
Charles.
indulge
You
him.
are the best.
Just
What
don't
a
encourage
wonderful email,
Osama.
though.
What are you doing?
So in the middle of that beautiful email there was a question, and it's basically, have our gaming habits changed as we get older? Who wants to take it first?
Um, I could start. I think that there's like, if I were to break it down, there's two aspects of this. Like my one of it was like distaste towards violent games. I guess with me going like game of the year for Elden Ring, like that hasn't changed that much in that way. Like I don't think like violence in games or something like this is a metric in which I choose the game on or not. Though
Mhm.
I have a bigger place in my heart for games that manage to create a meaningful experience without having to resort to violence or guns or anything like that. In fact, I much prefer to find games like that, and I would hope that we'll be having more and more games like that, in which like we don't have to rely on violence to sell video games. So I kind of agree with the general direction. I think
Mhm.
like my gaming habits kind of changed. Uh, when I was younger, I was a much more competitive gamer. I think by that I mean I
Mhm.
used to like play heavily multiplayer competitive games. I played a lot of StarCraft, played a lot of Street Fighter, a lot of Tekken, and a lot of Dota. Like
Mhm.
so. Starting out, and a lot of like even like Medal of Honor um and COD, but like I was always like gravitating towards more of like the competitive slash esporty style games.
Mhm.
Um, and like I used to practice a lot, especially when I'm playing like StarCraft or Street Fighter. I would like when I'm not playing against others, I'm at home practicing or like playing, doing the same moves over and over and over until I get the execution right, so I can get to a more competitive state. And I played competitively in tournaments and stuff like that in some of those games, especially in StarCraft. Um, but I guess
Wait. You
over
played
the years,
StarCraft?
oh, I played a lot of
Did I know
StarCraft.
that?
I
Did I
played
know this?
I played I played World Cyber Games at some point, Rami. But I
Wow.
played Brood
What
Wars.
did
That
you
was like
play? What did you play?
Z- Zerg
Oh, I hate
mostly.
you already. I was Protos.
Zerg rushing.
Yeah.
Just going
But
for
I
those
also
for
lost a
those
lot.
lurkers, just lurkers everywhere, just
I love
make my
those.
life hell.
Yeah, but Brood War, like I didn't play as much StarCraft 2. Like I think around the time StarCraft 2 is when like I was focusing a lot more on making games, so
Right.
I didn't compete as much, so
Mm-hmm.
like as and that's when like I think my gaming habits started changing, in which like I started playing a lot less competitive games and focusing a lot more on playing everything. And now I'm like more in like the sampling way, because I feel like because of my job and my appreciation of the craftsmanship of video games, I want to play as many of them as possible. Therefore, I can no way, play games so deeply in the way that I used to play Dota or StarCraft or Street
Right.
Fighter.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so you can't have it all, but I think like that's where I've diverged, in which like I'd rather have a wider net of games so
Yes.
I can perform better at my job than like having that super focused competitive style of gaming that I used to have.
Yep. I have
That's
to
me.
actually say my answer is almost the same as yours, almost word for word. It was exactly the same thing. I
Wow.
used to play extremely competitive games, especially when it came to fighting games and shooters, and I used to compete as well in tournaments, probably without as much success as
Wow.
you, but still, yeah. I used to like I wasn't great, but I played, and that was the important part. But I tried my best. You know what I mean? So I was competing and I was practicing in the lab, in my spare time with like my group of friends, and I joined a lot of arcade tournaments and fighting games back in the day, and loved it. I even used to organize chess tournaments just to give you an idea. Like that kind of thing was my thing.
Amazing.
Now, yeah, it was like there's a lot of parallels here. Uh,
Yeah.
Now there are, I think, two reasons. One is, yes, I'm getting older and slower, and because of that, like I can't compete at that level anyway. Like there is an age cap to being able to compete at high level, and there are biological reasons for it, so you can't really argue with it. And you can make up with it a lot with experience. That's true, but not entirely. There are still Twitch game like Twitch reactions that are going to put other people on top, and that's fine. You get used to it after a while. The other thing is, as I became a game developer, yeah, same as Fauzi, I like to play a lot of variety of games to get ideas from them. It makes my designs better. But also, I kind of am able to identify and see loops much faster now. And so some games just, I see what the loop is. I can project into the future, and I could almost figure out if I want to keep playing or not earlier than I used to when I was small. Like to a certain degree, the magic is gone or diminished, and there are only some games that to this day that kind of bring that magic back. Like Inscription for me was a recent example of this, where I didn't know where it was headed. I had no idea. Everything I guessed was wrong. All the loops were off, and I really enjoyed it as a result of that. Which is how Baby Osama used to like every game. Like every game was like that for me. But when you become a developer, you kind of see the patterns, you see the matrix, and as a result, some types of games I don't enjoy them as much or for as long. Once I figure out what the game's about, I lose interest in them, and that's not to the like to throw shade on them or anything. I'm not calling anything specific out. I think this is just a part of being a professional in the industry where that is also your hobby, right? I feel that's natural.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm quite different here. Like, I was never a competitive gamer. I did competitively play chess, but um, not video games. Like my background game, mostly PC, so racing games, strategy games, early shooters. Um, my biggest focus was strategy games, sim games, Transport Tycoon, Roller Coaster Tycoon, StarCraft, Warcraft, and then mostly spending time in the map editor, right? Making things, making
Game
levels.
developer.
Yeah, I mean, my first game was also my first modded line of code. It was, the only way to play a game was open the code. Um,
Hmm.
so for me, like breaking games was always the more interesting part. So I spent a lot of my StarCraft days just making levels. Right, I made some maps. Some maps were even played a bit. Never super popular, but like enough. Um, I switched to more like mainstream gaming with Game Boy emulation when I started playing the Pokemons and that sort of thing. Um, so for me, it was never competitive. And when I started doing game development, nothing much changed in the way I play games. The only thing that has really changed for me is just the amount of time I have and the amount of time
Mm.
I'm willing to throw at a game. So, where
Mm.
before, if I liked something, I would just play it all the way to the end. Now, if I like something, I'm capable of going, I like this. Okay, next. You know,
Mhm.
Hmm.
so for me, like, it's really hard to push through an entire game at this point because very frequently I don't feel that rewards me in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's a little bit of the professional deformation that the two of you were talking about, where it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Cool. And for me to have a game that makes me go like, no, 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 I want to finish this as a player. I want to finish this. That's become more and more rare, right? Like, I really like the new Pokemon. I don't think I'm ever going to see the end of it, right? I'm enjoying the
Yeah.
new. I'm enjoying the new God of War. I'm not necessarily at the end yet. I'm getting closer, but like it's really costing me effort. So
Mhm.
for me to, like Destiny is sort of like my main thing now, and I just like it because it's Skype for me. I just jump in with a friend and talk for like 2 hours while we punch aliens,
Fair.
and that's kind of it. So yeah, no,
I was about to
yeah,
say, like, for you, Rami, there's probably like a pre-Destiny and a post-Destiny gaming habit eras.
it, yeah, absolutely. And I think the funniest thing about Destiny is my favorite thing in Destiny is to teach new players Destiny.
Mm.
Like to just sit
Hmm.
down with somebody and be like, okay, so the interface is awful and it's going to take a while, but we're going to get you some good items. What kind of weapons do you like? This one, okay, let me help you on like this secret quest to get an item that is exactly like the way you want. Um,
I would argue
so
that you and maybe the three of us, we just like to teach people stuff generally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just have that in you, Rami. Like, if it's
yeah,
Destiny or anything else, you would just want to teach
I
people
think that's
stuff.
very true. You know what, Osama, though, and Fawzi, like if you two are okay and you're happy with the answers you've given, I'm happy with the answer I've given. I think there was one other part of the email that I really wanted to like put a pointer on or a
Of
little
course.
like mark, which is the end
Yeah, man.
where he talks about the being vulnerable about feelings and like talking about with each other about things. And I will
Mhm.
say, I I do notice that difference between the cultures a little bit.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Like like the word Habibi, and the reason the podcast is called Habibis, it's a term of like pretty strong
Of
endearment,
endearment. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's closest to like dear or darling or friend, but it can mean all of those things, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
So it's a very versatile word, but it's a very strong word of endearment, and there's never any like I've never felt any friction in using the word, even for people I've just met, right?
Mhm.
um if I have like a good connection with them, and I just want them to quickly go grab something, you can just say ya habibi, yalla ya habibi, like ta'ala.
Mhm.
You can get away with that. That's totally fine, right?
Mhm.
And there's context, and there's but like I don't think I would ever do that in a Western context. Like use a word that
Yeah.
kind of feels like habibi, and I've always found that like surprisingly healthy.
Mhm.
There's a lot of like ways in which the Arab culture has its issues and has like, but I think this is actually a fairly good thing. Is
Yeah.
like people
It's
hug
important to call out
and
the
they
good
laugh
things.
and they talk, and they can talk openly, frequently about a lot of things. Now, obviously, depending on the culture and the circumstances, some topics are more or less accessible, but
Mhm.
I've generally found that that's been a very valuable part of my life, and it was really cool to see somebody acknowledge that because for me it becomes invisible, right? And as I
Mm.
was reading Charles's email, I was like, oh yeah, yeah, that actually it is nice that I have the two of you as my Habibis to chat with, to talk to about things, and it's this
I
really
love your
wonderful sort of
Habibis.
thing. Yeah,
No.
but that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Like
We've
I
said
think
it
that
a
is
lot, but I look forward to this every week. I really do.
yeah, same.
You two are wonderful.
And I think
Uh,
it's a very valuable thing to sort of like undescribed that I think everybody deserves these kinds of friendships where they're just open and vulnerable and honest with each other, and they can talk about good things and bad things and feelings and cool things, and just exchange thoughts and give perspective. And I've had a pretty rough end of year, and you two have been there to talk with and offer advice and perspective and guidance, and that has been really, really like instrumental for me. So I, you know, for me, reading that and just sort of like taking this moment to acknowledge that this whole podcast has been super important to me and your friendship has been really important to me, I thought it was a good moment to sort of like take a second and emphasize that.
That's so nice to hear. I mean, so beautiful. Thank
Yes.
you, and thank you, Charles, for writing that email. Like it touched all of us, I guess, in so many ways. And yeah, thank you, Rami, for what you just said. Also means a lot to me too.
Absolutely.
You know how it is. I don't want to get all mushy at the end of the podcast, though.
Too late.
Because
So
I can get very
so
mushy, though.
Let's get a mushy ending to this podcast.
Let's mush
wrap
one
it
together
up.
quickly.
Let's mush something together. If anybody else wants to make Fawzi mushy at the end of an episode, please do send us mushy emails at info@thehabibis.com, specifically for Osama, or Fawzi's impression of Osama, which is impossible to distinguish, as we've all figured out.
Yep.
Love it.
It's
For
me
now-
laughing right now.
Yeah, it's
Osama.
me too. I'm Fawzi.
For now, I think we're going to put a doily on this one.
Doily time.
Thank you so much for everybody for tuning in for another episode of the Habibis. We will be back, inshallah, with a new episode next week. In the meanwhile, do send us emails, info@thehabibis.com. Check out our Discord, discord.thehabibis.com. Thanks so much for listening. For now, salam.
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 That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I was Rami Ismail, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at @THA_Rami. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Fawzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fawzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. The intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubaida, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and salam.